If you're just joining us, we're talking about web security essentials, and as a result of that, we need to talk about protecting the web. Up until this point, we've been talking about why we need to focus on web security and the various elements of the web infrastructure. And so now we need to talk about protecting the web. This is a part of the web security monitoring module that is inside of the SOC Level 1 pathway of TryHackMe. And of course, we're in the web security essentials room. So, to protect the web, the best practices are often very, very simple and very, very basic. It's just that they're so important that you have to do them. And if you don't do them, that you leave yourself open to very, very horrific. I was trying to say horrific and then horrible at the same time, and I said horrible. That could be a new word, honestly. A horrible catastrophic type of a result, right? So best practices, there are so many different security measures that can be done. Some solutions provide visibility, others can actively stop or limit an attack. This is known as mitigation. So going back to these task 3, this one right here, web infrastructure, where we discussed the 3 components of a service, a web service. We have the application, the server, and the host machine itself. So let's talk about the protections available for all of them. Protecting the application comes in the form of the coding methods, input validation, and sanitization and access control. These are very easy to understand. And again, these are basics, right? It's just that they're really, really important. So number 1, secure coding. So insecure functions, proper handling of errors, and removing sensitive information. This is like one of the key pieces right here, right? There's a lot of developers that they'll leave comments to themselves inside of the source code, and then they'll forget to delete the comments. And inside of those comments, they may leave hyperlinks, they may leave actual API keys or usernames and passwords, something, you know what I mean? Like they'll leave sensitive information that somebody can just click on the website, go do view page source code, and then they see the source code, and now inside of this, look at this. Okay, this is a comment. Open graph, Twitter card, Other meta tags are added by Cloudflare. This is dynamic meta tags. Worker will also replace. See GitHub, TryHackMe, Cloudflare. Do not add such tags here without middleware changes. This will be replaced by the worker. These are comments, right? So these are actual comments where somebody can literally be like, okay, let me just search through this, see what's up. Okay, what is this link right here? Where can we go? What information can I pull from this that I can potentially take advantage of this web application, of this website, right? And if you are not focused, if you are a security person, or like a developer that doesn't have a security background, I should say. So if you're a developer that doesn't have a security background, then you may not pay attention to these things where you're like, okay, oops, I forgot to remove this comment. And it doesn't look like it has sensitive information, but it's like, well, I forgot to remove that comment. I forgot to remove this link, right? Whatever. So it's that easy for somebody to look at the source code of a web application. It's so easy. So just removing sensitive information or using insecure functions, like remove the use of insecure functions, proper handling of errors, so that the error itself, if I try to load something and it doesn't load it for me, in the error message, it doesn't give me information that I can leverage for expanding my vulnerability or using a different kind of exploit to hack you. This is like a really big thing when we're talking about SQL injection errors and the variety of different types of hacking that we can do through a web application. A lot of times the information that we need comes through the error itself. And you do something to get an error just so you can see what the error message will tell you, and then you can use that information to expand on your exploit. Input validation and sanitization. So don't allow people to go to a search bar and then input something. So let's see if I can do this. Oh, I can. Look at that. I can actually put that. So we could technically do something like this, right? Script and then information. Like here is the information of the script. And then I can close the script like that. Something like that, right? So this actually allows me to do it. Now, if I press enter on this, there's a very good chance that it's not going to actually launch it. And so we can do something like this. Basic JavaScript code for an alert pop-up. I think this was one of the ones that we used a lot for our exercises. So if we go ahead, come on, give it to me. There we go. So alert, hello, pop-up alert, right? So This is what it would kind of look like if you wanted to put it inside of that. So these are the different ways that you can actually launch it. And so JavaScript alert hello, this is an alert pop-up inside of the script. So if I went ahead and I think this is the way that it would be launched. So it would be script like that, and then I would do something like that, and then enter, right? That, I don't think this is actually right. I think this might actually need to be fixed. The format and the syntax of this I don't think is right. But this is essentially the idea, is that like the search bar right here, it's not removing this, right? It's not removing that symbol, it's not removing this symbol, and it's not removing all of that. And if it did automatically remove that, that would be considered sanitization. Now, I don't want to press enter because it's going to take me out of the current web page that I'm in, but assuming that the web application servers for TryHackMe are secure, if I press enter on this, it shouldn't load anything other than these rooms right here. It should like rip everything else out. It should rip literally everything that could potentially be malicious code that could be injected into it. And it should just give me alert triage with Splunk, because there's the word alert in here. With Elastic, custom alert rules, scripting for pen testers, because there's the word script in here. So it should load these various things for us, and not necessarily anything else that would be deemed as a script. Now, what you can see right here is that the CI/CD and build security is also showing up because there's a /, and I have a / right here. So it's reading that as a literal /. There's so many things, right? There's so many things that we can actually go through. TryHackMe is pretty legit. I would assume that they have sanitization in place for their web applications. So that's just another thing, right? So validating the input and then sanitizing the input so that it doesn't process anything on the back end through the web server. Validate and sanitize user input to prevent injection attacks. And access control is to restrict access based on the user roles. I shouldn't be able to go into the admin page of TryHackMe to be able to log in as one of their web administrators and then change things and give myself a free membership or whatever, right? So all of these things fall under access controls. And the same thing applies to a company's web application internally. It's like a new employee shouldn't be able to get access to the management login pages or the management files. The management shouldn't be able to get access to the domain controller's login information or files or access portals, whatever it is. So all of this falls under protecting of the application. Protecting of the web server has to do with the kind of like the more technical elements. For example, keeping a detailed record of all of the requests with access logs. That would be really good logging. Having a really solid web application firewall that will filter and block harmful traffic based on defined rules. So if somebody tries to put something in here that could be an injection attack, the web application firewall should block them, right? Be like, hey, you're trying to do something that is deemed to be malicious. We don't want you to have access to this. We're going to block you. And that would be a web application predetermined firewall rule. So these are all very, very important. This is a very important technical element. This was the reason why Capital One got hacked, right? It was a misconfiguration through their web application firewall. Then we have content delivery network, which reduces direct exposure to your server and the use of the integrated firewalls. So the content delivery network is really essentially the network through which content is delivered from your server, right? So if you have a strong content delivery network methodology, then it reduces direct exposure to the server. Nobody should be able to directly interact with the server. They should only be able to interact with the web application, and the web application would then interact with the server. People should not be able to, like users and the public, shouldn't be able to access the web server. It should only be the server administrator, right? It should be the security team, so on and so forth. It shouldn't be just any random Joe Schmo that can go ahead and interact with the web server. Protecting the host machine, which we established would be the operating system through which we interact with the web server. You have to do the zero trust least privilege rule. So use low privilege users for services, right? This is like very, very important. give people only as much privilege as they need to do the things that they need to do. Apart from that, do not give them any other privilege. System hardening is to secure the system, basically. So disable unnecessary services and close unused ports. That's the most basic elements of hardening. And then use antivirus, which would be an endpoint level protection that blocks known malware based on the signatures of the malware, source code of the malware. And there are antivirus tools that also will detect based on the activity and whether or not the behavior of the interaction for that endpoint is known to be malicious. Like based on the baseline, we think that this is what normal activity looks like. This falls out of normal activity and we think that this could be malicious. It could be an anomaly, so we need to go ahead and block it. That's a much more advanced version of an antivirus, and we call that technically an intrusion detection system that is based on the behavioral activities, not necessarily signature based. But anytime that you see known malware, we're talking about signatures. We're talking about the source code and known elements of that malware that are on databases all over the internet that these tools, these antivirus tools, can reference. And then they'll look at those databases and we'll be like, hey, we think that this actually matches this known malware, so we're going to block it, right? So security tips for all three components: strong authentication, so really strong passwords. Don't just let anyone access your code, admin panels, or host machines. Patch management, ensure the app dependencies, the source code that are used as ancillary elements that your app depends on, right? So if your app depends on a bunch of different things. So if we go back right here, I'll kind of show you this a little bit because it's actually really important as well. So there's a portion of this right here. If we go down where it says external code, right? So external something, where is it? External scripts right here. So these are external scripts that technically are dependencies that this web page actually relies on. And these things have to run and they have to be secure in order for this web page to function correctly. So this is actually a really, really important concept to understand. This counts as a dependency. Everything that's inside of this portion right here counts as a dependency. And all of these things have to run smoothly and they have to be super secure. For example, the intercom.io widget has to be secure, right? This is very, very important. And this is one of those things that you need to also pick and choose what you are using as your dependencies to make sure that that company that provides them is constantly managing their patches and making sure that everything's up to date and there are no vulnerabilities that have not been accounted for. Logging is a really important concept. It is not a fun concept. I don't enjoy looking at logs. I don't think anybody enjoys looking at logs, honestly. But we need to account for this because this is like one of the key elements that basically all behavior is tagged to, like all behavior is attached to the log as long as you have really, really good logs in place. So when you get a request that is done to the web server, it needs to be done via the access log. They're incredibly valuable from the security perspective because they give you every interaction with the server, including IP addresses, timestamps, requested page or the data that was requested, the response from the server, and the user agent. And the user agent could be Google Chrome, it could be Mozilla Firefox, or it could be Nmap, right? That actually also falls under the user agent, which is essentially the software that is being used to access the server. So these fields play an important role in investigations, helping us detect potential malicious activity and trace the behavior. So if we look at a benign series of events, this is what it will look like. A GET request, potentially to retrieve information from the web server. POST request is to submit data to the server. The IP of the client for the user, that's what it would be in this case. They are trying to visit the homepage at index.html. They navigate to login. They enter their credentials and submit, and that would be the POST request where we're sending data, and then they access data from the my account HTML. So you can actually see that here. The first one, they did a GET request, right? This is the user, the client's IP address for the user, sending a request to the web server saying, hey, I need to get the homepage. And that's signified by index.html. Index.html is the default name for retrieving the homepage of a website. So they got it. The success code is the 200 code that we see right here. So if it's a 200 status code, that means that this page loaded successfully and they used Mozilla to get it, Firefox probably. And then the next step was, okay, I'm on the home page. Now I'm going to click on the login button. And so that will then load the login.html page for me. And that also had a 200 status code, which means it was successful. Then we have a post request where we still are interacting with the login page, but now we are post requesting, meaning we're sending data to the login page because there's most likely a form on the login page that I can fill out to give my username and password. So that was also a status code of 200, meaning the username and password was correct. And then I finally retrieved the My Account page. So this is another GET request that's done where this was done automatically, right? So this, I entered the website and landed on the page. This, I clicked on the login button. This, I submitted my user information. This one right here, my browser did on my behalf as it was retrieving my account page because the web server responded with a successful login. So naturally, the next forwarded link would be the My Account page. And so my browser would then request the My Account page to load. And now it's doing that. So I didn't actually request My Account page. It just automatically loaded for me because my login was successful. All of this can be told from these 4 log lines. We have like a full story from these 4 log lines of what's actually happening and whether or not it was successful. So this is very, very important. There are important line items inside of these logs that we just need to get familiar with, and we need to understand what they mean so that in case we are analyzing or troubleshooting something, or we're doing an investigation, if there was a malicious activity, whatever it is, we need to understand what these logs actually mean. So what cybersecurity concept involves stopping or limiting damage from threats? And that will most likely be mitigation. And it's unauthorized, meaning I have been logged out. So I'm going to log back in because I got logged out of this webpage. Okay, cool. It is mitigation. What security control involves ensuring all software and components are up to date? And we can say app hardening, I think, or patch management, actually. So looking at everything to see they're up to date. That is most likely patch management. Very good. Okay, cool. So now we can look at defense systems.